Well, hello and welcome to the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar, helping you cultivate a life you love. Now, I think at some point, every one of us has felt a little bit lost and, in need of guidance, help, assistance. And on today's show, my special guest is an incredible woman who she's the founder of Be Your Own North Star. Being that guiding light, finding that beacon for yourself to move forward. She's also a 5 times international best-selling author, and my goodness, has she ever, push through adversity in such an incredible way. She has experienced paralysis and cancer and 2 failed marriages. So you can just imagine, the stress involved. We all know what stress feels like. It's not great. It's not a fun place to be, but it's incredible to see how she has moved forward, and she is now teaching people and helping to educate others on how they can be their own North Star. So how about we say hello and welcome to Shirin Ariff. Such a pleasure to have you on the show today, Shirin.
Hi, Tanya, and hi, everyone. Everyone who's going to be listening and watching this. Thank you for having me on your show. It's an honor.
Oh, thank you so much. It's an honor to have you here. I think your story is incredible. I know that there was a documentary also that featured your life story. So we'll get
Mm.
into your life story, and because at one time your world was in a major upheaval, a turmoil, a time where you didn't know what your next step was going to be, and now you have found your way, created be your own North Star, which I think is really inspiring for others. So I'd love to go back in time
Hmm.
to the point where you were experiencing a lot of stress because I know a lot of people right now listening have their own challenges, and it's really important to know that you can get past your challenges, the trauma, the experiences that you're having in life that don't feel good. So sending love to everyone out there who is listening and who'll be watching as
Absolutely.
well, that you will get through your challenges. So let's talk about your experience, Shireen, if you can give us a little bit of history as to what happened in your life.
Yeah. So I can divide my life into, after cancer and before cancer. I mean, cancer was my pivotal point. And before that, I was born and raised in India, in Calcutta. I was the first child of my parents, and I was in a traditional family. And I was quite the black sheep because I was one of the first girls in the family to go to university while all my cousins were married and engaged. And so I was like the bad girl. She wants to go hang out with the boys in university. I wasn't allowed to talk to boys, and I talked to boys. and then and then they got me married because they were concerned that I was already 21 years old and I wouldn't get a good match for myself. All the good boys would be taken. So,
Mm.
um, like all parents have good intentions for their children. My parents did too. However, my first husband was a drug addict, and that was something very shameful in those days. People didn't talk about it, they hushed it up. And there wasn't much of drug addiction that was known. Nobody talked. There was no education. I didn't know anything about drugs. I mean, with the way I was sheltered and protected, don't talk to boys and then marry one. And
Yeah,
no,
yeah. It's hard to understand, what the male mind is if you're not allowed to speak to them, and I can imagine that's so difficult to navigate, and their
yes,
fear of, oh my gosh, what's
yes,
next?
yes. So I had no idea about what he was up to. At the
Hmm.
same time, my in-laws knew about it, and they thought that if they didn't tell me, and if he got married to me and he had a family and a child, he'd change, he'd become more responsible. And that's not how addiction works. I know that now. I mean, when I look back in life, but at that time I had no education, no understanding, and it only got worse. And my marriage lasted for 8 years. I had a daughter from my first marriage, and only after I was pregnant, 6 months pregnant, only then I saw with my own eyes that he was doing drugs.
Oh,
Before
wow.
that, I had no
Mm-hmm.
idea. So I tried to keep the marriage, and it was just, my effort of wanting to keep the marriage while, he kept slipping back into addiction and no amount of rehab worked. And then eventually he vanished into the hills in the Himalayas. Nobody knew where he was. And then, he kept running away from home. He kept stealing all of the things that come with addiction. He was such a lovely man.
Mm.
And it was sad to see him destroy himself like that. And then eventually he was being tested for AIDS. And there was, he had TB of the spine. And that's when both families were concerned about, us and our health and our well-being. My daughter wasn't going to school. There was no money in the house. And when you don't have money, nobody wants you.
Mm-hmm.
And so before cancer, I kept living my life based on what everybody else said how to do life. My parents told me whom to marry, what to do, how to live life. My in-laws told me when to stay with my husband, when to leave him. So, this was like I had no control over my life. First of all, I had no money, so I had to rely on other people to tell me what to do. So my life was never under my control and never the way I wanted it to be. I ended up coming back to my parents, waited for him for 4 years. Nothing really changed.
Mm.
Eventually filed for divorce so that we could move on with our lives. And then I thought life would get better because I went back to school, became a teacher, started working. Now I have my own money. And then no, because it's not about having money. It's about your mindset. Are you
Yes.
independent enough? Are you ready to
Mm-hmm.
take charge of your life? Or are you going to live your life based on other people's deadlines and, ultimatums? And I will tell you in all honesty, and I've never shared this on any other talk show,
Mm-hmm.
I would say this that there was a little motive behind letting others like choose how I should do life because I could then blame it on my mom.
Ah,
I
interesting.
could
Yeah.
blame it on my dad. Hey, you told me to do this because I had no confidence. First of all, I didn't even know what I want. I was
Mm.
not connected to who I am, what I want to do, what I want my life to look like. And so eventually, I was stuck and I was at home doing my job. And then my mom is like Mrs. Bennett from Pride and Prejudice, like, hey, she's always matchmaking for her daughters and she wants the best people.
Yes,
And
yes.
so she was like, you got to get married again. You're only 28 years old. Get
Mm-hmm.
married, get married. There was a lot of pressure. So eventually there's this man from Canada whose sister is married in our family. There's a wedding going on in our family and he's come down from Canada and he professes his love for me and he wants to get married
Mm-hmm.
and it's a big deal. Oh, she's going to go overseas and it's going to be great and all of that. And I am deep down inside, it's a no for me.
Mm, yeah. You didn't want to go
That's
back down that path. Mm-hmm.
I was not ready for another marriage. And I had a lot of, unfinished uh, thoughts, feelings, emotions around my first marriage. And then I was raised a traditional woman, Catholic school, like no divorce, all of that kind of stuff. So
Mm.
it was very hard for me. And then eventually, well, under pressure, I said yes. And instead of my life getting better, like people from India think you're going to North America, your life is going to be like you'll be rich,
Mm-hmm.
period,
Mm-hmm.
great life. But it was worse, like my life was miserable after I came here because my second husband was basically double timing and he was while I was waiting for my visa he ended up going back to his first wife even though get he didn't remarry her but they were having a relationship and he ended up having a kid with her
Oh
while I
my
was
goodness. So,
while I was
okay. That's a lot to process right there. I mean,
Yes,
when you find out that your partner, your husband, partner, what have you, is, seeing somebody else, having a relationship with somebody else, I mean, that's devastating. But then to find out that they've had a child, with that person, all, of course, unbeknownst to yourself, I mean, I can imagine that that is so devastating, and,
yes,
the shock would be quite intense. So, first of all, I want to acknowledge you for sharing and being
yes,
open and being vulnerable, and, allowing others to hear your story. And I think that it takes a lot of courage to do that and to be able to
thank
share
you,
and to get past that. So, yes, my
thank
pleasure.
you.
It's great having you here and having this conversation. And, I think that, it's so important to cultivate a life that is your design.
Yes,
I know that there's a lot of cultural pressure, for you growing up, which a lot of people can also relate to that. Societal pressure, cultural pressure, others telling us what to do, how to think, how to behave, what direction to take your life in. But if it doesn't feel right to you, that's when we really need to start, tapping into our intuitive abilities. And if something really doesn't feel right, then question that,
yes,
speak up. It's so important to have a voice. And sometimes in the moment, you don't have a voice because you just don't know any better, or you don't want to rock the boat, and you just don't have that confidence and courage to move beyond that. But I think
yes,
that of course, we always say hindsight is 2020, right?
yes,
But I think it's important that you, Shireen, have recognized that, hey, yeah, I didn't have a voice at that time, but I am now being a voice.
yes,
And in sharing your story, you are now being a voice for so many other people who can relate to that. Now, they can relate in a way that doesn't necessarily have to, entail all of the things that you have gone through, but it's any challenge you can equate that to, and moving beyond that. So again, thank you for sharing that. I think it's a remarkable, story. And you had that intuitive feeling that, hey, I did not want to be married again. And then the pressure of, what your mom especially felt and expected, outweighed that. So I think that, we have to acknowledge where we're at. But if something really is truly not right, then you want to start to open up the conversation, at least, open up the conversation, even to let's say, if you're in that marriage that doesn't feel right, how can you make it better? And was there a time, Shireen, that you thought, okay, well, this is not a marriage that I want to be in, for the second time, but, was there a time where you wanted to give it all up, or did you truly want to work on the
yes.
marriage?
So I didn't know about him having a child right away. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about that. It took a while, and he used to be very angry and upset because he wasn't staying with me in the evenings and the weekends. He was with the other woman, and he was telling her he's going to work, coming to me. He's working. He's with me for the day, and he set up an office from my home and said we're going to work together. And I became his office administrator, his janitor, his chef, his everything. Like I was laundry woman doing
Oh,
everything.
yeah.
And then, and then he would go back home to her and he'd say he's going to work night shift while he was telling me that. And so the stress of, not being in a, like, I was clear that something is not right. But because I forced myself into being in that situation and, I didn't listen to myself, I don't know what that was. Stress ended up with me getting paralyzed, and the entire right side of my face was paralyzed. And of course, my face was distorted, and, I didn't look good. And, you know, it was an ugly looking face at that time, in all honesty. And I don't feel sad or anything. And like I'm free liberated, and I'm able to just narrate it so people can understand. And at that time he started making me feel like, okay, you're not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So justifying that he deserves to be with another woman because I don't look good enough. And I took that on.
Mm.
I took that on, that yes, that is true. I'm not good enough, and I can't go back because my parents would be ashamed of myself. This is the second time. So let's put up with this. Let's put up with this. Let's try to make it work. Let's adjust. Let's do it. And it only got worse. And the
Yeah.
verbal abuse, the emotional abuse, the mental abuse was horrible, the financial abuse. And he knew my situation that I didn't want to go back. So I was honest and transparent. He knew my situation. So it was horrible. And because I was not in alignment with who I truly am, I was
Mm-hmm.
always the rebel. I was always, I'm going to go to university. I did know what I wanted, and I suppressed that because I lacked the confidence of taking a risk and
Yeah.
going for my dreams and like being willing to, put myself on the line for what I thought was meant for me, what meant for me. And so eventually I ended up with cancer. But that was, I think I manifested cancer in my life because
Mm-hmm.
I used to say my life is not worth living. Nobody cares. He doesn't love me. My parents are ashamed of me. Things are not working out. I'm not lovable. And so who cares? Like I should die. I wish I'm dead. And there were times when I would sit in the washroom and hope, how can I die? How can I die? And then, I had kids from him after. I thought, my parents and my culture back home is like, maybe if you have kids, he will change, he will transform, he will mellow. So I had kids from him, and nothing changed. It got worse. And
Mm-hmm.
then one day, when I really got the courage of saying, you know what, I think I want to quit. I had all the fears of how am I going to pay the bill? In this country, I'm not a citizen as yet. I'm on my PR. Where will I go? What will I do? I don't have my dad here. My dad was my biggest support.
Mm.
How am I going to do life as a single mother of kids and like paralysis? I don't know my way here. And I said, you know what? Even with all these fears, I'm going to give it a try. So I filed for a separation.
Wow. Big
And
step. That was a big
yes,
step for
yes,
sure.
I
Mm-hmm.
actually, the biggest step was uh, allowing myself to ask for help.
Mm. Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to do that. It can be so vulnerable, and when we feel like our world has been turned upside down, feeling lost, feeling like there's nowhere to go, often people turn inward and they don't seek the help. Everybody needs help. I mean, we're not on this planet alone, and we can
Yes,
reach out to others who are there to support us, whether that be, through words, through helping with finances, a myriad of things, just that
yes,
support, right? Confidence, definitely takes a beating, especially I think if, you've been in a relationship and someone has betrayed that trust, then you start to question yourself and, not feeling, beautiful, not feeling worthy, not feeling lovable. I mean, these are things that so many people can relate to. And I
yes.
think that that's, a bigger problem than the pandemic is the feeling that we are unworthy, that we are not enough.
No,
And it's simply not true. I mean, everybody is, who they are. They're born an extraordinary being. They are
yes,
extraordinary. And it's important to recognize that, to come back to the self. Now, if you've lost that sort of that guide, the direction in your life, or maybe you never even felt like you had it at all, you
yes,
can find it. So I think it's really important, to take those steps, no matter how small they may seem or how big, they may seem. I think you have to take some sort of action and have a willingness to improve, from where you are. So we do have to take a break here. So we're going to continue the conversation here on Sauga 960. You're listening to the Mindset Mentor. My special guest today is Shirin Ariff, and sharing her remarkable story of experiencing paralysis, cancer, two failed marriages. Her first husband was a drug addict. And then she thought, okay, the next marriage, would be better. And in fact, it turned out and proved to be worse than the first experience. And so, it's so inspiring to hear her story. And we're going to learn how Shireen was able to find her North Star so that you can find yours. So stay with us. We'll be back here on Saga 960. And welcome back to the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar. Today we are joined by Shirin Ariff, who is a 5 times international best-selling author. She is the founder of Be Your Own North Star. She's also a life coach, award-winning speaker, and is sharing her remarkable story. So just before we took a break, we were talking about, Shirin's experience. She said that she believes that she manifested cancer through all the stress that she experienced in her life. She also had paralysis, not feeling worthy, not feeling lovable, and 2 failed marriages, and wanting more for herself. So we're going to delve into more of her story, which is also has been put in a docu series called Beauty and the Beast. Shireen, it's such a great honor to have you on the show and listening to your story. You did talk about having cancer, first paralysis and then cancer. So what type of cancer did you have, and what was that like, hearing that you had cancer, and then how did you recognize that you felt you manifested it?
Yes, so I had thyroid cancer. Thankfully, it is a cancer that's easier to cure.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the doctors say. However, my cancer had metastasized, which means it had spread to my lymph nodes. And it was something to file for separation. And a couple of weeks later, I'm already facing the wrath of my ex that I have the audacity to file for separation. And I've been diagnosed with cancer. And that now whatever courage I had to fight him, to stand up for my rights, to not put up with his atrocities. Now I am like, okay, I don't know where this is going, because I don't even know if I'm going to survive this fight,
Mm-hmm.
to stand up for my children's rights. So then, I have to be careful about how to navigate through this. And he tells me, if you take this to court, I'm going to drag this till your death. I will never forget that, when he said that. And imagine, I'm just playing with the unknown now. I don't know where everything stands. So I had a very good lawyer who did the out of court settlement with me. And, we had to act fast because I had to go in for my surgery. I wanted the divorce wrapped up before the surgery
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted the house for my kids in case anything happened to me, so they have a roof over their head. When I went in, that happened. I didn't get my divorce order or anything, before the surgery. I had to go in for surgery sooner.
Mm-hmm.
However, things went like action was taken. I had a will in place, and then I went in for my surgery. The most difficult thing that I had to face was not this fear of death, not the fear of mortality, but
Mm-hmm.
facing my kids and telling them that I may not come back. I don't know
Oh,
what that looks like. And my youngest one was 3 years old.
oh dear. Mm-hmm.
I have twins that are 6. And then I have a 19-year-old from my first marriage. She quit her school. She quit her job because she said, I can't take it. And
Mm.
I saw the fear in my kids. I like the fear of what's going to happen because the father doesn't show up. It's the mom is all they have.
Mm.
And so that was so heartbreaking for me. And I went to St. Joseph's Hospital. That was just a block away from my home. And I walked there. When I went on the surgery table, that's when I had that moment and I realized how important I am.
Wow. Wow.
My
Mm-hmm.
life matters, and
Yep.
I I I get to live for my children
Beautiful.
because I didn't want my children to be like torn apart, sent to foster homes.
Yep.
My ex took off for a vacation with his first wife while I went to do my surgery. So I had complete clarity about who my family was, who did I matter to,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to matter to myself before I matter to anybody else. So I really got that. And before I passed out, when they gave me anesthesia,
Hmm.
I just said, God, one chance. I'm going to turn my life around. I'm going to like play it full out. And I have done so.
Whoa, I love that. Playing full out. Yes. And it's so interesting, to have that sort of epiphany, and to have that kind of clarity at a point where you question, do I even want to live? It's amazing how, when we ask questions, sometimes the universe, gives us an opportunity to figure it out. And that
Yes,
is a big lesson. It's a really big lesson to get, and to have the clarity of, yes, I absolutely want to, live. I want to move forward. I want to be there for my kids, and to have that instant kind of clarity. And the most important thing, I think, that you said is that, for yourself, you realized how much you matter, right? And there's a lot of people that question that. Who do I matter? It's like, too, like, what do people think? And it's like you have to find, your inner worth and your value, because if you don't value who you are, it's almost impossible for other people to value you, right? Because you won't even recognize it if they
yes,
do. Mm,
absolutely.
mm,
Yeah. I mean, I was chasing the love that I didn't have,
mm,
and I was just not present to the love that I had in my four kids. So, that was what I got present to. And then after I went through cancer surgery, they removed my thyroid gland,
mm-hmm,
and then I went for a round of chemo. And that was a time when I've never been alone in my life before that. I've
mm,
always been with people, like my parents, my brothers, my siblings, and my husband, then my
mm-hmm,
kids. I've never had an opportunity to be alone. And when I went for chemo, I mean, nobody was allowed to enter because I was radioactive. I had nuclear medicine.
mm-hmm.
The doctors would come see me in hazmat suits, like,
Scary.
and the nurse, yes, the nurse
Yeah.
would leave the food outside. So I was alone by myself. My window was overlooking the lake. And that was the time when I kind of saw my North Star.
Wow. Oh my
That's
goodness.
when I found direction in life. That's when I was like, okay, this is what I want in my life. And I promised God, the higher power, myself, that I will make my life count.
Mm.
And what that would look like is I'm going to serve. And I didn't know how I was going to serve. After that, setting the intention, having clarity, things show up. The universe shows you the way. You've seen your North Star.
Yeah, there's
Nah,
some synchronicities that show up, right? That, but you have to be open to it and be able to
yes,
see it and recognize it, because I think
yes,
that we always get signs. There's, free will, and we have choices. And
yes,
when we are so overwhelmed with the stress, we sometimes can't even see what's right there in front of us.
yes, yes. And so I came back from my surgery, and sometime later on Facebook, I saw this, somebody had posted that there's a scholarship being awarded for a speakers academy, and, like, try for it, do a pitch. And I was a teacher back home, but I had lost confidence in myself
Mm.
completely because of all the experiences I had. And there was a spark in me that was like bold and like, kind of, I want to do that. I want to do that. And I said, okay, what's the worst that will happen? I'll just play. And I did that and I won the award. And when I went there, like doors started opening up. When I went there, many doors opened up. First of all, from my divorce money, the first thing I did was I invested in two things.
Mm-hmm.
One is, one is, we went to Disney to celebrate.
Yay!
That
Yeah,
was one thing. The
yeah.
other thing is I started investing in personal development. So
Mm-hmm.
I did a course called Landmark, which
Mm-hmm.
is very intense, and a whole community of authentic people opened up for me. People heard my story and they came up with support. Will you speak in my podcast? Will you share your story in my interview? So I was being seen and heard, and I had no idea. I was sharing my story at that point with the intention of feeling my power. Hey, I got
Yes.
my power back.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting a kick and thrill out of it. Oh yeah, like, people want to hear my story. I was in that state, that early state of like, okay, I'm being heard and seen. And then when I started getting feedback from people, hey, this moved me, you inspired me, that's when I really got, how important it was for me to share my story. This was service that I was wanting to dedicate my life to. And then I realized how important it was for me to share my story. No, it was no longer about me, and it was about
Mm.
how it would impact the world. And then I became bolder, and then I said, okay, let me write a book because, from my community, there was someone who was a publisher who was standing for me. And then I wrote my book in 2019. And then I had emails from people that I've never met saying they're dealing with this, or
Mm.
like, how could, and I've gone on calls and supported them and spoke with them. And then slowly, 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 I started becoming some kind of a coach, that's what the North Star does,
Yes.
like helps you find direction, right?
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because I think, as soon as you start to take some action, other things will show up. And so you don't need to know, how things are going to play out, right? When
Yeah.
you start to take action, they sort of just evolve and they naturally unfold.
I feel like before cancer, I was not grateful for being alive.
Hmm.
But after cancer, I really got the value of my life. And I'm so grateful for
Hmm.
being alive. I make sure I celebrate all my birthdays. I'm
Yay.
like a child. Like I celebrate my birthdays. And that's because I'm grateful that I lived another year and another year after cancer. And I also tell people that cancer was the cure.
Whoa, that's so profound. I love that. Cancer, was the cure. And oftentimes when people get that diagnosis, they're going to, drop into fear. Certainly a common reaction, and certainly nothing wrong with that if that's where you're at. But it's extraordinary to see that you recognize the gift. And I think that, we may not always get the lesson right away, but there's a gift in all of our greatest challenges. Is certainly what I believe. And I know through my life as well. I mean, everyone has challenges, and I know that my greatest challenges in life have been such a blessing. And to be able to move forward is certainly very empowering. And I love that you are teaching other people as well, and to celebrate. I mean, you celebrated. You took your family to Disney. It was something that you wanted to do, and so there are things that happen in life that are challenging, and we don't love necessarily what's happening, but we can make the most of it because
Yes.
the reality is that when something has already happened, we can't change that, but we can always change our reaction to that. And I think that's why it's really important to work on the self, to find a mentor, to find a coach, to study, to learn, to read books. There's so much knowledge, and we can learn from each other. And your journey of personal development, started, and you certainly took that to another level of taking what you learned and teaching other people. And your story also was. On a docu-series called Beauty and the Beast. So I'd love to, talk a little bit about that as well.
Beauty and the Beast is about, like how this lady, how beauty feels like if she loves the person to bring out the prince in him, and like that's how I was living my life because
Mm-hmm.
I used to think, okay, I'm gonna love my husband so much, so much, so much that he's gonna transform, like get back. But nobody is born a beast. Beast is
Mm-hmm.
like the curse fell on you,
Yeah.
and so
It's our
you know,
mindset, right? The belief that we have. It's the
yes,
habits. It's the
yes,
negative thinking, the feeling
yes,
unworthy. Mm-hmm.
yes. So I thought that, with all my loving and loving and loving to offer, he's going to transform. And it doesn't happen that way. So it's a little bit about that, that how I was attracting that because for me, subconsciously, uh, being the rescuer was important.
Mm.
That was playing on my subconscious mind. And so that story revolves around that. And then, you know, in trying to do that, I ended becoming a beast
Mm.
because towards the end of my marriage, like with all the verbal abuse and mental abuse, torture that went on, I became very ugly. You
Mm.
know, I was so fed up that in the end I used to lash back, and there used to be like a shouting match at home. And, it was terrible. So in the end, it was about finding the beauty within me, like, overcoming that beast and being my own beauty,
Hmm. Yeah.
discovering my own beauty.
Wow, discovering your own beauty. And, that's really an important lesson because everyone is beautiful, absolutely. And one can definitely not feel so beautiful in times of stress and challenges,
Mm,
trauma, chaos in life. And, we become very disconnected from the self. And that's
yes,
when you feel ugly. I mean, nobody is ugly, but you feel ugly through that separation of the self. And there's that incredible moment of awakening when you recognize your true value and you remember who you are.
yes,
Because oftentimes we just forget the perfection
yes,
of who we are. You've had many lessons and certainly that the clarity that came through illness and through the writing process as well. So, I'd love to hear your journey of writing a book. So, from having no voice to being told what to do, by waiting for others essentially to tell you what to do, so that they were responsible because you didn't want to have that responsibility for your own life. But then writing a book, becoming super responsible for your own life. How did that feel writing the book, and was it difficult for you to do that?
it was. I wrote the book over 2.5 years. I
Mm-hmm.
had to stop and process because when you recreate the trauma and all of that, it's like PTSD. The
Mm-hmm.
triggers affect you. And so when I was writing the book, there were a lot of things. I was afraid that when this book is going to go out in the world, is
Mm-hmm.
my ex going to be really vindictive and lash out?
Mm-hmm.
That fear was there. And then the fear of like, well, my parents say, the shame, like, why am I, what they wouldn't want me to share the story and let everybody know about my failures. Who wants to talk about the failures?
Mm.
And so those fears were there, and I said I'm going to do it anyway. Uh, I did it. It was very healing and cathartic to embrace everything, all of it, you know, all of it, the good, bad, and the ugly. So it was, yeah, that's my life. Yes, I failed. Yes, I messed up, to own all of that. And
Mm-hmm.
like, there were times when, you know, as soon as I landed in Canada, even before I knew anything, I could feel there are red flags. I could see all those red flags. And I allowed myself to, to be treated the way I was treated. So I was very angry, and I used to think I was very angry at my ex. And then eventually I realized how angry I was with myself for putting
Mm.
myself through so much when I didn't deserve to be treated like that. So all of those discoveries from writing the book, and then wanting to be the voice of those who are still, who haven't learned how to find, who haven't found their North Stars as yet, you know, telling them, hey, I could do it. Like, hang in there and keep working on yourself. It doesn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm. It's a
I
journey.
had to, and it's a journey. It's quite a dance, because you take 5 steps forward, and then your fears creep up, and then you take
Mm-hmm.
3 steps back, but keep going, keep going. Don't be
Yeah.
stopped. And so those were things that I discovered. And then, I remember being interviewed, and one of the ladies who interviewed me, one of the reporters, she asked me, what's your message to the man? And I really got present to, my book tells the men, uh, what it is like for us women to be treated like this, so that they
Mm-hmm.
really get the impact.
Mm-hmm.
For example, my first husband, he did drugs. He thought he was just destroying his own life, but think of what it did to me and my child,
Yeah.
his daughter. We had to go through so much, even though we didn't do drugs.
Yeah, it
So
has far-reaching, detriment to so many people around. It's not just the direct family, even it's beyond that, and it's
yes,
even community is affected by that. So it's really important to to seek help for those who are in an experience like Shireen, and they have a loved one who is an addict. I know, Shireen, you said that some of those the treatments were not successful, the rehab or what have you. And but I think that we can help as much as we can, but it's certainly up to
yes,
that person, right, to be able to change. I mean, usually there's such deep hurt and pain or trauma, and people are wanting to cover it up, and it's like we will reach for the drugs or for alcohol, and it's really about wanting to feel better in the moment, trying to escape pain. And if we can sit with it, and understand it, then we can transmute it. And certainly there's professionals out there who can help. Reach out to your local communities and find some support groups, and even
right,
even just like a support group for yourself of having to deal with a loved one who is going through that. It's really difficult, and if you can know that there's other people who have also experienced that you can at least release some of that built up fear, tension, stress, the feelings. We want to get our thoughts out, because again, it can manifest into disease,
yes.
in the body, right? When we just sort of suppress everything, and so it's very weighty. Now we're going to take another break, and we're going to
Okay.
continue the conversation with the lovely Shirin Ariff. She's an incredible woman, beautiful soul inside and out, sharing her remarkable story of experiencing paralysis and cancer, two failed marriages. One husband, her first husband was a drug addict. And experiencing betrayal, finding out that her second husband was living a double life, and fathered a
Mm,
child with his first wife. And there's a lot to process there, and she found clarity, was able to find her North Star, and she's now helping others to find their North Star, to really remember their value, find the love for the self that has been missing. And we will continue when we come back here on Saga 960. Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar, helping you to live your best life. And today, my special guest is Shirin Ariff, who is helping us to find our North Star. And I know sometimes we can feel lost in life, feeling like we have no direction, but there is always direction. But you have to have the willingness to keep on moving forward, right? Put one foot in front of the other and know that you will get through your greatest challenges. Shireen, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. And thank you for sharing, your life story and the resiliency that you've had, and that you continue to share now with other people. You've experienced paralysis, cancer, two failed marriages, betrayal, certainly, in your marriage. And there's a lot to process there. And another thing that you briefly touched on that I'd like to delve into a little bit further is the verbal abuse that you experienced and what that was like, and also, for you and your children.
Yes. So, what I really got present to was how abuse is normalized in some homes. Now,
Mm-hmm.
because my ex grew up in a family where his older sisters were being physically beaten, back home in India, and his mother was being beaten. So for him, he thought that he was at least not beating me. So it was verbal abuse, and it's better. He's better than his dad. But what I really got present to is the responsibility we women take in being, a part of the whole system of abuse. And in my book, there's a chapter called Raising Abuse, where I talk about it's not just enough that, okay, I don't abuse people, but there is a responsibility here when I put up with abuse. What am I teaching my children if I don't abuse, but I'm okay with being abused?
Mm.
And so as caregivers, as mothers, as people who are responsible for raising children or leading a family, it is very important to be present to that. That are we raising abuse? Are we normalizing abuse in our families? That was one thing that I got present to, and I share that. And, I got clarity about, I help people to understand that because a lot of the times people think I'm not abusing, so I'm a good person, I'm a martyr. Somebody's abusing me, but I am nice, I'm not doing that. And no, it doesn't work that way. We don't abuse and we don't get abused by
Mm,
anybody. We
yeah.
stand up, and so that was one thing. And so there have been many different learnings and lessons in my life. And what I've learned is don't be afraid of the dark because it's an opportunity for you to see your North Star.
Yes, that
That's the
darkness.
beauty. Yes. You don't,
Yeah, that darkness can create the most illuminating moments, right?
yes, yes,
And again, it takes courage, to take a look at that and to start to understand our actions. And
yes,
oftentimes, again, it is habit. It's a familiar pattern that we've experienced, through our upbringing, and oftentimes it goes way back, ancestral patterns that we're all picking up.
yes.
But there is a point when you really start to remember your truth and to understand how lovable you are and how worthy you are. You can break those chains of old, worn out negative patterns that keep you stuck to a life that really isn't yours by design.
So when you say the word stuck, that's what I do as a life transformation coach. I help people, that are feeling stuck in their lives, break free from that mindset of being stuck. It's
Mm-hmm.
all in the mind, and you're a mindset coach, so
Mm-hmm.
you get that, and basically it's that, and like help people, find freedom, feel empowered, and lead a joyful life. That's what I do, and it's magical to see people's transformation. And
Yes.
yes, that's
Beautiful. Well, you're an amazing role model to
mhm.
obviously your family, your children, but to many around you, and everyone who has heard your story. Definitely a wonderful role model to help to guide them, as and so inspiring. I absolutely love that. So I'd love to talk about the reaction as you began that inner transformation, when you became empowered, when you found your voice, when you found your North Star. What was it like for those around you who were used to guiding you and telling you what to do?
Some of them didn't like it.
Hmm.
Some of them were like, "You really changed. My God, you're rude." Uh, you know, oh, you're not the same person anymore. We were used to the gentle Shirin, and I'm still the gentle, loving, caring Shirin. Like,
Yes.
and I won't put up with anything that will be belittling me in any way. And it's not that I'm arrogant and I don't listen to people. It's not that they cannot tell me what to do. I'm still as ready to listen and hear. And then I have my North Star. I go inward and I'm like, okay, does that work for me? Because I'm pretty sure when people give advice, a lot of the times they mean well and they care and they're sharing from their experiences.
Hmm.
And that may not be something that fits for me.
Yeah, that's so true. Because people can only share from where they're at. And I think a lot of that happens too when you have a dream and you have a goal and you share that with somebody and they all of a sudden they don't like it, and then we start to question ourselves, right? But it's not their dream, it's your dream.
Yes,
And we really need to be true to who we are and what we want in our lives. And remember that putting yourself first is not a selfish thing. It's actually selfless when you can put yourself first. And by the sounds of it, Shirin, in your life, clearly you were that martyr, putting everybody else first. If I can make my husband happy, he's going to transform. And there's so many steps that follow from that point, and how we put other people's priorities as that number one, and we completely forget ourselves. So I love that you were able to find that inner self and put yourself first.
Yes, I'll just give you a simple example. When I went in for chemo,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people who cared about me, they said, "Oh, I've heard you lose your hair and you'll throw up, and all of these things are going to happen
Mm-hmm.
to you." I did not get upset at them.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Thank you," because they're coming from a place of care. And I told myself that's not going to be my reality. I didn't lose a strand of hair because I said so.
Good for you. Fantastic. I love it.
So that was
Yeah.
miraculous for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We can really talk ourselves into something, right? When we believe it, right? So I think that's such a key thing. So we don't have a lot of time, just a couple minutes
Yes.
left, Shireen. So I want to, ask what's next, and how can the viewers find you and the listeners?
Okay. I am all over social media. I'm Shirin Ariff on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I have a website. It's called beyourownnorthstar.com.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and what's next for me? I'm putting together an anthology of cancer stories with beautiful people that have survived cancer. The intention of the book is to give hope to people,
Mm-hmm.
because I went through cancer myself, and that's a common thing throughout, everybody's experiences. Mostly, when a person is diagnosed with cancer, the first thing is the first reaction is that of fear,
Mm-hmm.
and people give themselves the death sentence that they don't have to. So, this book that is coming out early December, just before Christmas, we're doing a pre-launch in October,
Mm-hmm.
will have beautiful stories of survivors that have overcome cancer, embraced it, and are doing beautiful things out there in the world because they have found their North Star.
Oh, I love that. So inspiring. What a beautiful mission and purpose. And again, I want to thank you so much for being on the Mindset Mentor today, for really sharing and going deep into the layers of some of the trauma and abuse that you
Mm.
experienced, but also coming out the other side with incredible resiliency and empowering others to be their own North Star. So again, continue on an extraordinary mission. Keep doing the amazing work that you are doing, and keep inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's been awesome. And unfortunately, that is a wrap for today's The Mindset Mentor. So thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. And remember that you are your own North Star. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. You can get through your greatest challenges. And, it's just, it may not feel good in the moment, right? And you may not know how, but it's important just to
Yeah.
remember your truth and to keep on going.